doesn't exactly exemplify what I think a Phi Beta Gamma is.
Oh, and what is that?
Well, it's not Ralph Lauren shirts and wingtip shoes in corporate America. We don't need a brother like him in this fraternity.
What does it mean to be a part of the group? Oftentimes I've seen people be excluded because they aren't black enough, or Latino enough, or whatever, because of the way a person presents themselves or talks or acts. I understand that we're social animals, but if it means giving up who we are, is being part of the group really worth it? One of the original reasons why I was going to make this video was in response to an article that came my way through Twitter. It partially described the experience of the author growing up having been of African descent and LGBTQ. They explained that their parents didn't approve, describing it as a white person thing, and it got me thinking about how many times were we as minorities excluded or alienated by our own groups because we didn't fit an imposed standard. Also, why does this happen exactly? Now, being black, I've seen this within the community all my life, and often it was directed at me. I've never been into rap or hip-hop, I'm not into sports, and I'm really soft-spoken. Also, my family lived mostly in the suburbs. Growing up, I was bullied for being white or being a sellout, which is actually kind of racist, by the way. Apparently, because I was more into science, art, and RPGs, I was somehow less black. Also, since coming out, I'm even less black to some people, because, like I said before, it's seen as a white thing. See the We're Exploding video as to why this is complete and utter bull. This concept has been somewhat explored in some areas of the media. For example, in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air episode, Blood is Thicker Than Mud, Carlton is kept from joining an all-black fraternity because he was seen as not being truly black. This was because his parents were wealthy and he lived in an upscale neighborhood. The Boondocks episode Wingman covered something similar with the differences between the main character Huey and the one-shot character of the episode, Dewey. Dewey styles himself a true black revolutionary because he wears traditional African garbs and writes, well, what he considers poetry.
Death kills us like crack killed Pookie, like Schwarzenegger killed Dookie. Chewbacca was a Wookiee. Revolution. Boo!
In contrast, he considers Huey, who is, despite his young age, a known black radical freedom fighter, to be the poser. This is what is called the No True Scotsman fallacy, or an appeal to purity. I decided to find some other real-life examples of this fallacy. So after searching, I came across a number of stories on internet forums from multiple groups. For example, in Quora, one man describes his experiences growing up. In his school, white students could be a member of any clique, like nerds or athletes, for example. However, African Americans were always just considered the black kids. And that meant you had to listen to hip-hop or R&B and wear the same styles of clothes. You could still be an athlete, but your black identity always came first. And if you didn't follow the crowd, you were considered a sellout. He went on to describe how African Americans are often judged by the lowest common denominator and are thought to be that stereotype. These views are often reinforced by the media, and as a result, members of the group fall in line with those stereotypes. This is what is known as the golem effect. I found quite a few more describing similar experiences where, as kids, African Americans were classified as sellouts because they didn't fall in line with what people considered to be a part of black culture. The perpetuation of these stereotypes only further divides the African American community against itself. As I continued to look deeper, I found that this occurs in almost every group. Sometimes the reasons can be slightly different. For example, in the LGBTQ community, you have the trans medicalists. Trans meds essentially try to gatekeep a trans identity by setting standards of who can be considered transgender. Often this means medically transitioning and being able to pass as cisgender. This often doesn't take into consideration those who can't medically transition and in some cases even socially transition due to safety concerns, economic, or medical reasons. This is despite multiple medical organizations having all said that medical transition is not needed if you don't want it. There are also those who believe that you need to experience gender dysphoria to be trans. Again, despite the fact groups like the APA, the American Psychological Association, have said the opposite. That's not even getting into all the NB-phobia hurled at the non-binary community. Also within the LGBTQ community, you have the gold stars. For example, the term gold star lesbians, who are women who have never had sex with a man. Essentially, it's used to demean those who experimented with their sexuality, essentially in a rather homophobic way, saying that they are beneath them. You also have cases of where people believe that if you're gay, you have to be out and proud, and if you're not, you're just a poser. Despite the fact that there are safety concerns or social concerns why some people don't come out. This is not even getting into all the biphobia that exists in the community. The list of minority groups who do this goes on and on. So why does this happen? Why is there a need to gatekeep like this? For some reason, people take so much pride in their identity that they feel they need to protect it from alleged fakers. According to some researchers, it may not only come from an appeal to purity, but unhealthy competitiveness as well. We're taught competitiveness throughout our childhoods and adult lives. We're told that our classmates or coworkers are trying to be better than us, and if we don't try and beat them, we'll be doomed to a life of failure. In some cases, we're taught that helping others succeed will only drag us down, and that they're all trying to sabotage us. Essentially, we're told that we have to be at the top or we don't matter. In fact, we saw something of a manifestation of this on display not too long ago, actually.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
In a study conducted at the University of California at Berkeley's Institute for Research on Labor and Employment, evidence was found showing that for some, achieving status is always most important, even if it's at others' expense. The study was conducted using 230, later 226 undergraduate students. In phase 1 of the study, they were given a questionnaire at individual workstations, which included measures of demographic variables, personality traits, and emotion recognition. The second phase included status manipulation. Participants were first told that the other members of their group also completed the same questionnaire and were provided summaries that were false of their members' personality and emotion recognition scores. The scores shown for each member's personality traits and emotion recognition skills ranged from high to low. All participants were shown the same set of scores for their fellow teammates. Participants were then told to rate the status of each member of the group based on the scores they were provided. The overall status rating of each group member were used to determine which person will be selected as the leader on a group exercise completed later in the study. After that, the participants were given false feedback regarding the status they were accorded by the group, as well as the status the other group members were afforded on average. Specifically, they were told that the range of possible status ratings was 1 to 7, and that their status, i.e. the median rating given to them by other members of the group, was either a 4 in the own status equals low condition, or a 6 in the own status equaling high conditions. They were also told the other group members' average statuses. In the third phase, participants completed 4 measures of psychological well-being: positive and negative affect, satisfaction with life, and self-esteem. They also completed a manipulation check and a suspicion check. In the end study, one suggested that the participants had a highly competitive orientation towards status. Participants enjoyed higher well-being when others' status was lower than when it was higher. And this was even true when their own status was high. In other words, participants felt better in a hierarchical group in which they alone would be afforded a high level of respect and deference, than in an egalitarian group in which all members would be afforded a high level of respect and deference. Like I said, from a young age, it's ingrained in us that we have to be competitive, that we must achieve the top spot, but we were never warned against the prospects of unhealthy competition. GoSkybound.com provided a pretty good list of what unhealthy competitiveness is based on. This includes scarcity and fear. Competition is unhealthy when it presupposes that there is only a limited amount of success or achievement available out there in the world. In that way, it's based on scarcity and fear rather than abundance. It says I have to fight to get my piece of the pie, or else others will get it and nothing will be left for me. Which is a pretty common motive a lot of conservative types try to instill in the populace in an attempt to turn them against each other, most commonly done to turn whites against minority groups. For example, telling people that immigrants are coming here to steal their jobs.
They take our job!
Getting validation and attention. When competition is motivated by desire to get attention and validation from others, it's ultimately coming from a place of insecurity and self-doubt. This weaker foundation negatively impacts one's ability to perform and compete at the height of their potential. At the same time, it's so narrowly focused that it forgets about the broader team or community. Diminishing others. Competition can become unhealthy when it's oriented toward tearing others down. It's one thing to be motivated by self-interest, but another thing to start actively sabotaging the performance of others. This ill will and destructive activity not only hurts others, but also eats at the core of the person or entity doling it out. Such as when trans meds go after non-binary individuals, non-passing trans individuals, or those who can't or don't want to medically transition. All it does is drag the community down. And winning at all costs. Unhealthy competition puts a disproportional amount of emphasis on the outcome rather than valuing the process or the journey involved in getting there. And when the outcome becomes the sole focus, it can promote the idea that a person or team has to do whatever it takes in order to succeed. This mentality can lead to all sorts of bad decisions and unhealthy practices. In contrast, GirlScout.com also provides a list of what healthy competition is based on, such as advancing the entire field or organization, unlocking personal potential, honoring mutually held values, and journey along with the outcome. Essentially, this desire for status leads to unhealthy competitiveness, and once they believe the higher status has been attained, the appeal to purity comes into play. Just like how people try to say that you're a sellout for not being into black popular culture, or how if you're non-binary, you're the reason the trans community is persecuted. It doesn't matter if you're one of the good ones, they're coming for all of us. Unhealthy competition is just another of the ways the elite keep the rest of us down. They stomp on us while telling us that our peers are the real threat. Although they encourage it between us, in reality, they fear any type of competition that threatens them. The infamous Plutonomy memo that was produced by Citigroup basically voices this fear. At the end of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air episode I mentioned, Uncle Phil gets the last word with the question, when are we going to stop doing this to each other? Indeed, when? Because if we don't, our subjugation will never end.